Live. Going live. Here we are. Are we live? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, we're live. Okay, here I go again reading some more Gosho. I'm just going to go random again. Study on the SGI-USA app. Click on WND, which is Writings of Nichiren Daishonin. And I'm going to go to the second volume this time. And I'm just going to go second volume. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down. And I'm going to click on one. Sitemap. No, I don't want that one. Okay, we're going to go to 392. Reply to the sage Iwamoto Nichunu. Okay, here we go. I should read the background first. Background. This is a fragment of a letter. This is a fragment of a letter that was addressed to Iwamoto Nichu. One view identifies him with Buzen Ko, who was a follower of Nichiren Daishonin and who, as a resident priest of Jisoji Temple in Suruga Province, received from him a letter entitled Jishoji Temple. The meaning of the first sentence is unclear, but one opinion suggests that two Buddhas indicates Shakyamuni Buddha and Mahavarashana Buddha, and another suggests Shakyamuni Buddha and Amida Buddha. Okay, so let's say that when this was written now. Okay, are we to suppose that this applies to two Buddhas at the same time, or is one of the parties speaking lies? So most likely it's Amida Buddha if it's speaking lies, if he's asking about that, but maybe the Vairashana Buddha also. In recent times, the Nembutsu believers have deluded and led astray the whole world. One should wake up to this fact as quickly as possible. Incidentally, I was surprised and delighted to receive the fine horse you sent. There are various matters I want to discuss when I see you next. With my deep respect, Nichiren. The 12th day of the 9th month, reply to Saga Iwamoto Nichu. My studies during this period have been solely for this purpose, and I have heard a rumor that teachers of the True Word School have appealed to the authorities. That's all that Gosho was. That was a short one. I think that's the shortest one I ever read. I didn't really have much study about it, but they put every one of his writings they found in about 2,000 pages of writings to a lot of people. So we're going to go on and read another one then. So let's go back. Okay, we're going to go to volume 2 has a lot of that. I'm going to do volume 1 again. Okay, volume 1. Just going to scroll down and hit distinguishing the Lotus Sutra from the True Word Sutra. Okay, should I do background first? Yeah. Nichiren Daishonin wrote this letter to Soya Kyoshin, a follower in Shimosa province, on the 12th day of the 11th month in 1274. It was 6 months after he arrived at Minobu. So I guess he was released from exile the beginning of 1274. The last letter we read yesterday was 1273, while he was still in Sato. Okay, it was 6 months after Minobu. In the 10th month, the Mongol forces had overrun the islands of Tsushima and Iki and attacked Kyushu, just as the Daishonin had predicted. The reason for these sufferings, the Daishonin points out, lies solely in the widespread misconception about the relative superiority of the Lotus Sutra and the True Word Sutras. He says that both the ruin of China and the current troubled state of Japan can be traced to this false view that the True Word teaching are superior to the Lotus Sutra. This view dominated thinking at Enrakuji Temple. I went to Enrakuji. It's up on the top of Mount Hiei in Kyoto. The temple founded on Mount Hiei for the protection of the imperial court, and eventually the imperial court was rendered powerless. Now that this false view has spread to Kamakura, which is near Tokyo now, warns Daishonin Japan will again be headed for ruin. So the reason he's saying this is because it says if people distort the teachings in the latter-day law, there'll be 7 major disasters, and all of them happen except foreign invasion. And he predicted foreign invasion because all the other disasters happened to show that he was the one who was prophesied in the Lotus Sutra as would rise during this time to correctly expound the teachings that were meant for the latter-day law that are in the Lotus Sutra. Okay, so here it goes. My prediction of the calamity of domestic revolt and the calamity of invasion from abroad has now been proven true. In light of this, it seems that matters correspond to the sutra's passage that read, "Marauders from many other regions will invade and plunder the nation. The people will suffer all manners of pain and affliction, and no place will exist where one may live in safety." That is a quote from the Sovereign Kings of the Golden Light Sutra. Okay, where were we at? Okay, I pushed that little hyperlink and it brought me down, and I had to go back up. Okay, I'm not going to hit those hyperlinks anymore. Okay, everyone will be in the same situation as the residents of Iki and Tsushima find themselves in now. This is entirely due to the erroneous views of the Buddha's teachings. Erroneous views of the Buddha's teachings mean a mistaken understanding of the relative superiority of the true word teaching and the Lotus teaching. My criticizing the Zen teaching and the Nembutsu teaching was a preparatory step leading to the revelation of this matter. In China, due to the deception and delusion of 3 Tripitaka masters, Shan Wu Wei, Qin Kang Shi, and Pukung, the doctrine of Tiantai Lotus School was stolen and grafted onto the Mahavrashana Sutra of the True Word School. By doing so, those men covered up the heart and soul of the Lotus Sutra and the virtue of the great teacher Tiantai, and consequently China went to ruin. In Japan, the great teacher Jikaku designated the Mahavrashana Sutra, Diamond Crown Sutra, and Susiddhakara Sutra as the 3 texts that would ensure the security of the nation, and rejected the text that the great teacher Dengyo had said would ensure the security of the nation. From this time on, evil doctrines arose on Mount Hiei, and eventually the rule of the imperial court came to an end. These evil doctrines have come down to Kamakura, where they will again surely cause ruin of Japan. Because the misguided views of the great teacher Kobo are so utterly transparent, not everyone is fooled. But the great teacher Jikaku's interpretation concerning the Lotus and Mahavrashana Sutra, which state that though equal in terms of principle, the Mahavrashana Sutra is superior in terms of practice, has already been accepted by men of wide learning. How then could ignorant people fail to take faith in it? This is what is referred to when it is said that the great teacher Jikaku, praying fervently to decide upon the relative superiority of the Lotus Sutra and Mahavrashana Sutra, saw himself in a dream shooting an arrow into the sun. But was this not because an Ashura has taken possession of the great teacher Jikaku and shot his arrow into the great sun of the Lotus Sutra? Should present-day Mount Hiei and the people of Japan accept this teaching, If this teaching were true, how would it be any different from one who is trying to fling aside Mount Sumeru? Should my disciple accept it? I say this because it is the last time. You must bear me no grudge. With my deep respect, Nichiren, the 12th day of the 11th month, to the lay priest Soya. So he had written many treatises to the government and to different people, talking about why uh, there were so many calamities going on since he was born. The year before he was born was the first time the emperor was beheaded, and two other emperors were exiled to Sato on another island. I think it was, he said that island. I forgot the name of that other island, but they called that emperor the retired emperor of whatever the name of that island was. And then they started having major typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes, famine, pestilence. And all of this was predicted at the time of the fifth 500-year period when the Lotus Sutra would be the teaching that would be ready to be finally fully actualized in the Bodhisattva superior practice, which is Nichiren. So all of the 7 disasters that are predicted in the sutras when people go against the true teachings, everyone except the last 2 hadn't happened, and he predicted that when he was on Sato, and they started happening. So the reason he was writing so many letters to so many people and trying to refute the erroneous teachings is because he wanted to save the country from total ruin. And luckily, the Mongols, when they finally released Nichiren and pardoned him and allowed him to set up a school at Mount Minobu, the waves they call kamikaze, which is the god of the wind, and the storms that hit Japan wiped out the Mongol invading armies, so they didn't come back after that. Luckily, otherwise Japan would have been totally overrun, just like the sutra said. But it wasn't until actually World War II that Japan was fully overrun, just like the sutra says, and that would be the time of the Kozenrufu, or the time of wide propagation, which from Nichiren's time on, it's mostly was a priestly religion for a long time in different schools, Nichiren Shu, Nichiren Shoshu, but not widely propagated as much as it is now. And that's why when before World War II was finished, the 2 founding presidents of the Sogagaku were put in jail because they opposed the war. And finally, Japan was able to have the prediction from the sutras that it was invaded by foreign powers and overrun by foreign powers, which is, he just said the sutra quote there. It says the sutras that he were quoting here. So let's see which one, the footnotes. Oh yeah, just the Sovereign King of the Golden Light Sutra that talks about what would happen when the people bastardize the teachings in the latter day of the law. And that'll be the time for widespread of the true teaching, which is what Nichiren teaches. So that's a little small sutra for you tonight. Should I read another one? I'm getting a yes on that. So I'm going to read another one. I'm going to go to volume 2. So some really cool ones in volume 2 that I'm so glad they put out volume 2. Because when they used to be the writings in Nichiren, the major writings in Nichiren Daishonin was 5 volumes. I read all 5 of those, but it contained most of what's in volume 1 and some of volume 2, but not all. They didn't have all the writings translated in English or ready to be put out in English yet until after the Sokogakai freed itself from the temple. Okay, where are we going to go back? How do you go? Menu. There we go. Once you get into one sutra, it's hard to go back. Oh, no, don't do that. Open SGI-USA app. Here we go. Okay, I figured it out. You have to go to one of the other tabs and go back, and then that's how you get to the beginning. Okay, I'm going to do volume 2, and I'm going to go just randomly down the sideline here and stop at one letter to Hojo Tokumune, which was daimyo, I believe. Okay, this one, the background says, as explained in the background of the preceding letter that addressed to the lay priest Yadoya, otherwise known as Seimon Mitsunori, Nichiren Daishonin wrote 11 letters to the political and religious leaders of the time on the 11th day of the 10th month in 1268. These all collectively known as the 11 letters of remonstrance. In this volume, these are written numbers 195 through 205. This is the first of them, which the Daishonin sent to Hojo Tokimune, the 11th regent of the Kamakura shogunate and effective ruler of Japan, via his close aide, the lay priest Yadoya. Tokimune was only 18 at the time of this letter. Wow. He was the regent of Japan, the effective ruler, and he was only 18. What a trip. Of course, people lived a lot shorter lives back then because time was slower, because we were in the epoch of, I forget which era, but anyway. We're a binary star system, so time is speeding up. That's why people are living a lot longer, even if they don't practice modern medicine. That's a whole nother discussion. You got to go listen to my crazy videos. No, they're not crazy. They just seem crazy because no one else is talking about it. Okay. But the sutras do talk about it. It talks about time speeding up. It talks about the lifespan adding 1 year each certain amount of time until it's up to 100 and something years old, and then 100 and actually 50 or something like that, and then going back down to like 30. It goes through cyclical cycles because we're in a binary star system, and the stars are going around each other like that, and they're getting close. That's why we're in the Aquarius. That's why things are heating up. Of course, fossil fuels is contributing to it, but it's a natural cycle every 27,000 years or so. And then it gets cool, and then it gets slowed down, and people have shorter life expectancies because time is actually slowed down, and everything's slowed down, and the days are longer, and nights are longer. Days are longer, nights are longer. That's a good song. Okay, Tokumune was only 18 at the time of this letter, and having assumed leadership of the nation at a young age, was suddenly confronted with the threat of attack from abroad. With the arrival of this missive from the Mongol demanding fealty and threatening invasion if their demand was not met, the shogunate was astounded. The Mongols had already extended their control over the Korean peninsula. In this letter, the Daishonin points out that the prediction of the foreign invasion he made in his treatise on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, otherwise known as Rishon Kokuron, which he submitted to Tokumune's father, Tokiyori, in 1260, had come true. He strongly admonishes Tokumune that in order to avert disaster, he must withdraw his support of erroneous Buddhist schools and temples. He calls for a public debate in the presence of the regent, saying, the different types of prayers that are being offered up should be suspended, and the representatives of the various schools should be summoned into your presence so that they may debate with me to decide what is correct and what is incorrect in matters of Buddhist doctrine. He closes by indicating that his statements are not self-serving, but made only with the well-being of the nation and its people in mind. The 11 addresses were Hojo Tokumune, Yadoya, Seimon Mitsunori, Heino Simon no Jo Yoritsuna, Hojo Yagenta, Doryo of Kenshoji Temple, Ryokan of Gokurakuji Temple, the superintendent of Daibutsuden Temple, Jufukuji Temple, Jokumyoji Temple, Tohoji Temple, and Chorakuji Temple. The letters in this volume appear in the above order of recipients. At the same time, the Daishonin wrote a letter to his disciples and lay believers, informing them that these 11 letters of remonstrance and warning them to be prepared to meet any persecution that might arise as a consequence. So he knew if he remonstrated with the government and wrote these letters, he would be persecuted and his followers would be persecuted. But he said, I can't be silent on this matter because it's a matter of national security. And he was right. Okay, here it goes. With all due respect, I wish to make the following announcement. On the 11th day of the first month of this year, an official announcement was received from the Western barbarians, the great Mongol Empire. This accords precisely without the slightest deviation with the predictions I made on establishing the correct teachings for the peace of the land, which is Risho and Kokuron. The work that I, Nichiren, compiled some years ago on the basis of key passages from the various sutras. Nichiren is thus in some sense a sage, for a sage is one who knows those things that have not yet made their appearance. Accordingly, I take this opportunity once more to deliver a respectful warning. You must cease at once to lend your support to Kenchoji, Jufukuji, Gokurakuji, Tohoji, Jokomyoji, Daibutsuden, and other temples. So all the Ji means temple. So Jokumoji is the temple of Jokumyo. Okay. If all temples have Ji at the end, except Den, Daibutsu because it's a more important Daibutsu. I forget what the den means again. They have it here in the footnote, but I don't want to read that until the end because it'll fuck me up going back. Okay. If you do not do so, you will assuredly invite attack, not only from the Mongols, but from lands in all the four directions. You must act quickly to overcome and subdue the men of the Mongol nation and bring peace and security to our land. And the task of subduing them cannot be accomplished without help from Nichiren, or without the help of Nichiren. While the nation has a minister who will speak out in reprimand, that nation will be set on its power course. And while a family has a son who will argue with his parents, the family will be saved. The fate of the nation depends upon the correctness of its government policies, and the validity of Buddhist teachings may be determined by consulting the bright mirror embodied in the sutra's text. This land is a land of the gods. That's what they call Japan since its founding. They said I forget the name of Amaterasu had two sons, or son and daughter. I can't remember how it works, but in one of these gods stuck their sword in the ocean and pulled it up, and all the dirt clods from the sword being pulled out formed the nation of Japan, and that's why they're the land of the gods and everything. They call them kami. They have the kaze kame kaze, the wind god, the whatever kame, the sun, of the moon, of all the different mountains gods and river gods and everything. But the word God is not really, this is the English translation. It's more of a force. Kami is more of a deity and a force. It's more of a nature worship, not a, like we think of God in the West as a personification of some being. It's not a being, it's a force. Okay, this land is the land of the gods, the lands of the force of nature. That's what he's basically saying. And the gods will not condone what is not in accord with correct behavior. The 7 reigns of the heavenly gods, the 5 reigns of the earthly gods, and the other gods and benevolent deities are divine beings who guard and protect the one vehicle teaching. The one vehicle is the Lotus Sutra, because that's what it says in the sutra, and the sutras before it and after it say that it is the one vehicle. There's not 3 vehicles. There's only one, it says. Thus, the Lotus Sutra is their food, and uprightness is their strength. The Lotus Sutra states, quote, the Buddhas, saviors of the world, the Buddhas, saviors of the world, abide in their great transcendental powers, and in order to please living beings, they display immeasurable supernatural powers. So supernatural or transcendental powers, different definitions for the same thing. When a nation casts aside the one vehicle teaching, how could the benevolent deities fail to display anger? The Benevolent King Sutra says, quote, once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. And these are the 7 disasters that he predicted, and all of them happened except the last 2, foreign invasion and internal rebellion, which ended up happening while he was in exile. Once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. The king of Wu failed to heed Wu Tzu-chu's words of warning, and thereby brought about his own destruction. The evil rulers Che and Shou put to death their loyal minister Quan Lung Feng and Pi Kang, and as a result lost their thrones. And now Japan is about to be seized by the men of the Mongol nation. Is this not cause for distress? Is this not cause for alarm? If you fail to heed the warning of Nichiren, you will surely regret it later, for Nichiren is the envoy of the Lotus Sutra. So he's already saying, before even Sato, to the leaders of Japan, I am the envoy of the Lotus Sutra, which means I am the votary of the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra says, quote, he is the envoy of the thus come one. He has been dispatched by the thus come one and carries out the thus come work. This is the voter of the Lotus Sutra, which is Bodhisattva Jogyo, the leader of the voters of the Lotus Sutra. We are all the voters of the Lotus Sutra who read the sutras and read the writings of the leader of the voter of the Lotus Sutra, which is Nichiren. And the work of the Buddhas of the 3 existences of past, present, and future is the Lotus Sutra. I have sent letters of warning to various other persons, and it is my hope that you may summon them all, discuss the matter, and let me know your judgment on it. In effect, the different types of prayers that are being offered up should be suspended, and the representatives of the various schools should be summoned into your presence so that they may debate with me to decide what is correct and what is incorrect in matters of Buddhist doctrine. There may be fine pine trees growing in the depths of the valley, but if the skilled carpenter is unaware of their existence, he may err in his choice of material. There may be a person in the dark who is dressed in beautiful brocade, but if others fail to recognize him, this is due to their own stupidity, because they're blind, it's dark. In the 3 countries of India, China, and Japan, the question of correctness in matters of Buddhist doctrine was decided by the ruler, that is, by King Ajatasattu in the case of India, by the rulers of Chang and Sui dynasties in the case of China, and by Emperor Kamu in the case of Japan. I am not urging any private or prejudiced view of my own. I speak solely out of the motive of intense loyalty. I do not speak out of my own sake, for my own sake, but for the sake of the gods, for the sake of the ruler, and for the sake of the nation, and for the sake of all living beings. With deep respect, Nichiren. The 11th day of the 10th month of the first year of Bun-e, 1268. So he was exiled 3 years later. No, 2 years later. Respectfully presented to the lay priest Yodaya. He was sent on his behalf, or to the region of the country. Anyway, that's enough for the Gosho tonight. Thank you for whoever's watching and liking. One person liked so far. It's late at night. I'm going to go to sleep. I haven't got any closer yet that I know of to finding a good job, so I'm still looking. If you guys have any ideas, I applied for banking jobs. I applied for a bunch of other jobs. I used to be in banking for 9 years before I went to Soka University. Actually, for 6 years before I went to Soka University, and 3 years while I was at Soka University. So 9 years in total. And I was in teaching for 13 years in Japan. I was in health club sales recently, car sales, insurance sales, which I don't want to get back into insurance sales. I might get back into car sales. I like selling Toyota, so I went to go apply. I applied online, and then I went to go give my resume today to one of the Toyota dealerships I want to work at, which is close by. And I was amazed to find my previous boss from another dealership is now the system manager there, or manager of used cars, which was kind of cool. So maybe I have a good chance there, because I think he liked me, even though he was one of the persons responsible of signing the firing me, but he had to do that because the other bosses said he had to do it, and he was just doing it on their behalf. And I think he knew that I was a very good loyal worker, but under the circumstances of what was going on at the time at that dealership, no one was doing successfully. I was just one of many people that were fired. I think he finally left or was fired after that. Okay. Anyway, see you guys. Love you all. Talk to you maybe tomorrow night if I do another reading. Go back. I have tons of readings on the Goshos and on other amazing books that I read. Some of them you might think are kind of crazy and out there, but if you go listen long enough, you might even see that there's some truth in some of it. And even if there's 3% truth in all the craziness of the things I said in some of these crazy videos, that would be amazing, because I believe there's more than 3%. But if you even notice that 3% is correct, then you would be pretty wise in your understanding of what I understand. All right, take care. Peace out. See you.